But this research really took off thanks to Bengt Holmstrom's contributions starting in the late 1970s and onwards. And he basically has a number of different research contributions that highlights all sorts of different important aspects of how to do these contracts. What information do you want to base performance on? What do you do when an agent has to be incentivized to do lots of different things, not just one thing? How do you incentivize a team? So maybe people are working together to produce something. How do you think about giving the right incentives over time? For example, how does your future career prospects affect your incentives to work today? Okay. So to be a little bit more concrete, let's think about an example that I think a lot of people are familiar with. How do we pay managers and CEOs of big companies? Okay. So this is a principal agent problem. The principal are, the shareholders. Okay. They want to hire this agent, this CEO, to act in their interest, to create as much value for the shareholders as possible, for example. So it turns out you can apply Holmstrom's different theories on lots of aspects of this problem. So for example, the informativeness principle, which is a famous result of Holmstrom, that talks about what information should you base, say, the bonus on. Okay? One implication of that, for example, is that it might seem natural to reward a CEO if the profits of their company is high. Okay? But that means that's not the full story, because if we just base bonus on the profits of their own company, then we're going to be paying the CEO in many times just because they're being lucky, or punish them because they're unlucky. So if you run an oil company, you might be more profitable just because the oil price goes up. That's just luck. We don't want to reward the CEO for that. Okay? So that's an implication of the informativeness principle. Another natural example is that a CEO needs to do many different things to create value in a company. So for example, we might want them to really make sure that this year's profits are high, but we might also want to make sure that they take the best long-run decisions in the company. We invest in, let's say, R&D or long-term investments where the profits may show up, far into the future. Okay, so how do you balance these incentives for, this year's profits versus long-term value for the company? And one interesting finding here is that typically it's easier to measure profits today compared to long-run value. Okay, so there's a temptation to base the bonus on the thing you can observe or easiest measure, right? The profits today. But that has a problem, because if you only base the bonus on today's profits, then maybe everything that the CEO will focus on is just this year's profits and forget about long-run investments that are important for the firm. So in that situation, maybe you can't have any bonus at all, not even on short-term profits, if you want to have the right balance with incentives. And the third example is this career concerns model of Holmstrom, which basically says that when you're young, you get an incentive. Even if you don't have a bonus, you have an incentive to do the right thing, because you might get promoted and get a pay raise in the future. But this also tells you that if you think about a CEO, maybe having a big bonus or performance pay is much more important when they're getting old and closer to retirement, compared to when they're young and are incentivized by future career prospects. So that sort of summarizes Bengt Holmstrom's contribution